The morning air on Kepler 442b tasted like metal and danger. Captain Lee Dabin stood perfectly still as the alien commanders gathered around her, their massive forms casting long shadows across the staging ground. The laughter started low, like distant thunder, then grew louder until it echoed off the crystalline cliffs surrounding their position. General Krextall was the loudest. The Vorthek commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, his 4 muscular arms crossed over his chest as he stared down at Dabin's equipment. His reptilian face split into what might have been a grin, showing rows of sharp teeth that gleamed in. The pale light of the alien sun. This is joke, yes? Krextall's voice rumbled through his translation device. Human captain brings camping gear to real war? Commander Velanash floated beside him, her crystalline body catching and reflecting light and dazzling patterns. The ethereal's voice chimed like broken glass as she spoke. Perhaps humans do not understand scale of this mission. We assault fortress that has stood for 50 cycles. The third alien commander, Grox of the Sword Forces, hissed his agreement. His scaled hide was scarred from countless battles, and his yellow eyes studied Dabin with obvious disappointment. Warm bloods always think small. This why they lose wars. Dabin looked at each commander in turn, her expression calm and professional. Behind her, Sergeant Kim Tae-ho maintained perfect military posture, his face showing nothing as the aliens continued their mockery. The other human soldiers in their small unit stood equally still, weapons held ready. Eyes alert, the staging ground stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with the war machines of 3 alien civilizations. Vorthak hover tanks rumbled like mechanical beasts, each one larger than most human buildings. Their plasma cannons could level city blocks with single shots. Ethereal war crystals floated in precise formations, their surfaces crackling with deadly energy that could cut through any known armor. Saurid tunnel borers waited in neat rows, their drill heads sharp enough to pierce solid rock. In the middle of all this overwhelming firepower stood 12 humans with standard field equipment. Standard Terran field equipment, sir, Dabin replied to Krextall's question. Her voice carried clearly across the staging ground, drawing more attention from alien soldiers preparing their weapons. The Vorthek general's laughter shook dust from the nearby equipment crates. Standard. Yes, standard for species that never wins battles. He gestured with all 4 arms at the human backpacks. What you carry? Food for picnic? Blankets for nap time? More alien soldiers gathered to watch the show. They pointed at the human gear and spoke in their various languages, but the translation devices made their amusement clear to everyone. Some took pictures with their recording devices, probably to show their friends back home how primitive human military technology looked. Dabin opened her tactical display and studied the mission briefing one more time. The high fortress sat 2 kilometers away, its biomechanical walls rising like a mountain from the hostile landscape. Acid pools bubbled around its base, and weapon emplacements tracked any movement within range. 3 previous assaults had failed completely. Thousands of alien soldiers had died trying to breach those walls. Mission parameters are clear, Dabin said, closing the display. We need to establish forward operating base within 2 kilometers of target. My unit can handle that assignment. The alien commanders exchanged looks that needed no translation. They thought she was insane. Commander Velanash's crystalline form shifted colors from blue to deep red. Captain, with respect, your species lacks understanding of siege warfare. This fortress requires massive bombardment, coordinated assault, overwhelming force, not— She paused, searching for words. Camping expedition. Grox stepped closer, his clawed feet scraping against the rocky ground. Saurid forces bring tunnel borers. Vorthek bring plasma artillery. Ethereals bring energy bombardment. Humans bring what? Sleeping bags? We bring what we need, Dabin answered simply. Krextall roared with laughter again. What you need? Perfect. Answer. Humans always think they special, think they clever. But clever not win wars, power wins wars. Big guns win wars. Many soldiers win wars. He gestured toward his hover tanks. Each tank carries firepower of small fleet. Plasma cannons, missile pods, shield generators. Weight of 40 tons, crew of 8 warriors. This is real military equipment. Dabin nodded. Politely, impressive hardware, General. And you? Krextel pointed at her backpack. You carry what? 5 kilos? 10? What great human technology fits in tiny bag? Sergeant Kim Tae-ho stepped forward slightly, but Dabin raised her hand to stop him. She could see the anger in her soldiers' eyes, but this was not the time for confrontation. They had a mission to complete. Permission to begin advance to target zone? Dabin asked. The 3 alien commanders looked at each other again. Finally, Grok spoke. You want to go first, before real assault begins? Forward operating base establishment is time-sensitive, Dabin explained. We need to be in position before main assault commences. Velenash S form flickered through several color changes. Captain, perhaps you should observe first assault. Learn how real warfare operates. Your forces can provide support functions. Support functions? Sergeant Kim Tae-ho's voice carried just a hint of steel. Medical aid, Krextel said with obvious condescension. Communications relay. Supply. Transport. Leave fighting to species that understand combat. Dabin checked her chronometer. They were burning daylight, and the Hive defenders would be most active during the planet's long afternoon. With respect, sir, we have our orders. Terran. Defense Corps operates independently within Alliance structure. Terran Defense Corps. Grox repeated the words like they tasted bad. Humans always make big names for small things. Corps. Like you real military. More laughter echoed across the staging ground. Alien soldiers pointed and made jokes in their native languages. Recording devices captured every moment of human embarrassment for posterity, but Dabin noticed something the aliens missed. Her soldiers were not embarrassed. They looked ready, alert, professional. Each one carried their equipment with practiced ease. Every piece of gear placed exactly where it should be. These were not amateur soldiers playing at war. These were veterans who had survived battles the aliens could not imagine. We move out in 10 minutes, Dabin announced to her team. Private Park Jiwoo shouldered his pack without complaint. Corporal Lim Haijin checked her weapon systems one final time. The other soldiers began their movement preparations with quiet efficiency. Krextel watched them with growing amusement. Look at them, so serious, so professional. Like they going to accomplish something important. Maybe they surprise you, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Admiral Vexron approaching. The elderly Vorthex's scarred hide and missing arm marked him as a veteran of countless battles. Unlike the younger commanders, he was not laughing. Admiral, Krextel straightened to attention. You think humans can succeed where 3 assault waves failed? Vexron studied Dabin for a long moment. I think humans survive when others do not. I think they win battles that should be impossible. And I think we should watch carefully what they do with their tiny backpacks. The old admiral's words created uncomfortable silence among the assembled aliens. For just a moment, the laughter stopped. Then Krextal shook his massive head. With respect, Admiral, humans lucky sometimes. But luck not defeat High Fortress. Luck not break walls that stopped our best weapons. Dabin saluted the 3 commanders. Thank you for the briefing, sirs. We'll report progress once forward base is established. She turned and walked away, her soldiers falling into formation. Behind her. As they moved toward the horizon, alien laughter followed them across the staging ground. None of the aliens noticed that the human backpacks hummed very quietly as they walked. The sound of alien war machines faded behind them as Captain Lia Bi-din led her team across the broken landscape. The ground beneath their feet was a mixture of crystalline formations and hardened mineral deposits, created by centuries of acid, rain, and geological violence. Every step required careful placement to avoid the sharp edges that could cut through standard boots. Sergeant Kim Tae-ho moved beside her, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Contact from Base Command, Captain. They want status report every 30 minutes? Acknowledged, Dabin replied, but her attention was focused on the terrain ahead. The high fortress loomed in the distance like a living mountain, its biomechanical walls pulsing with organic rhythms. Weapon emplacements tracked across the landscape in search patterns, and she could see movement along the ramparts where Hive warriors maintained their watch, 2 kilometers. It seemed both impossibly far and dangerously close. Private Park Ji-woo jogged up from the rear guard position. "Captain, alien scouts following us." Staying back about 500 meters. Dabin was not surprised. The alien commanders wanted to see what the humans would do with their camping equipment. Let them watch. They might learn something useful. The team reached a ridge overlooking their target zone after an hour of careful movement. Dobbin studied the area through her tactical display, noting sight lines, defensive positions, and resource availability. The location was perfect for their needs. "This is it," she announced. "Corporal Lime, establish perimeter. Private Park, begin site survey. Everyone else, prepare for deployment." Corporal Lim Haijin moved with practiced efficiency, positioning herself and 2 other soldiers to cover the most likely approach routes. Her weapon was ready, but she knew the real threat would come later. When the Hive realized what was happening here, Private Park Ji-woo unpacked what looked like a standard surveying kit and began taking measurements. The device in his hands appeared simple, but it was actually analyzing soil composition, mineral content, and structural stability with precision that would impress any engineering team. "Ground composition is excellent, Captain," Park reported. "High metal content. Stable crystalline matrix, good drainage. Perfect for what we need." Dabin nodded and set down her backpack. To any observer, it looked like a standard military field pack, the kind soldiers had carried for centuries. Black synthetic material, multiple pockets, reinforcement straps. Nothing special. The alien scouts watching from their distant position probably thought she was preparing to set up a tent. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Dabin pressed her thumb against a small panel on the pack's side. The panel glowed briefly, then a quiet mechanical sound began, so soft it was almost lost in the wind. The pack's surface began to change, seams appearing where none had existed before. "E.g. ice online," a calm voice announced through her earpiece. "Beginning site preparation. Estimated deployment time, 6 hours for basic configuration, 18 hours for full operational status." The other soldiers were unpacking their own equipment, and nothing looked like what it appeared to be. Specialist Oh Min-sik opened what seemed like a standard radio kit, but complex antenna arrays began extending from components that had been compressed into impossibly small spaces. The communications gear deployed with mechanical precision, each piece finding its optimal position. Without human guidance, Staff Sergeant Yu Dong-ho's ammunition crates opened to reveal something that was definitely not bullets. Robotic components unfolded and began assembling themselves into defensive turrets. The metal was some kind of advanced alloy that gleamed like silver but felt harder than diamond. "What the hell are they doing over there?" came a transmission from the alien scouts. The communication channels were supposed to be secure, but human encryption methods were apparently more advanced than alien security protocols. Dobbin smiled as her backpack continued its transformation. The top section had lifted away to reveal manufacturing equipment that should have required a building to house. Molecular assemblers began breaking down the local crystalline rock and extracting useful materials. The pack's internal structure was far larger than its external dimensions had suggested. "Captain," Corporal Lim called from her position, "we have movement from the fortress. Looks like patrol drones coming to investigate." Dabin checked her tactical display. 6 biomechanical flyers were moving in their direction, still several kilometers away but closing fast. The Hive had noticed their presence and was sending scouts to determine the threat level. "How long until we have defensive systems online?" she asked. 40 minutes for basic point defense, AEGS replied. "Current deployment progress is optimal." Too long, the drones would arrive in 20 minutes, and the human team's personal weapons would not be enough against Hive Bao armor. But Dabin had expected this problem. "Sergeant Kim, activate Plan Delta." Kim Tae-ho grinned and reached for what looked like his water bottle. When he twisted the cap, tiny mechanical components began spilling out and assembling themselves into quadcopter drones. Within minutes, a swarm of microfighters was rising into the air, each one no larger than a human hand but equipped with precision weaponry. The alien scouts were probably having communication problems with their commanders. Right about now, how do you explain that humans were building a military base using camping equipment? Private Park Jiwoo's survey equipment had revealed its true nature as a geological manipulation system. The ground around Dobbin's backpack began to shift and rise, forming defensive walls from the local crystalline rock. The walls grew like living things, but they were actually being constructed by machines too small to see. Contact with Alien Command, Specialist O reported. They want to know what we're doing. Tell them we're setting up a forward observation post, Dobbin replied. It was technically true. The fact that this observation post would soon be larger and better defended than most planetary capitals was just a detail they had not asked about. The Hive drones were 15 minutes away when the first defensive turret came online. Staff Sergeant Yu's ammunition boxes had produced a complete point defense system that could track and eliminate aerial targets with deadly accuracy. The turret looked like something from a science fiction movie, all smooth curves and glowing. Energy conduits, how is this possible? Came another transmission from the alien scouts. Humans do not have this technology. But they did have this technology. They had just never bothered to show it off. Human military doctrine emphasized surprise and adaptability over intimidation. Why reveal your capabilities until you needed them? Dobbin's backpack had grown into something that resembled a small building. Manufacturing bays were producing construction materials, while automated systems assembled them into defensive structures. The base was building itself, using plans. Stored in quantum memory cores and powered by fusion, cells no larger than coins, the Hive drones arrived to find a human position that had not existed an hour earlier. Defensive turrets locked onto them immediately, and microfighters swarmed to intercept. The battle was brief and one-sided. Biomechanical drones were dangerous against conventional forces, but they had no defense against weapons designed specifically to counter their organic technology. Drones eliminated, Corporal Lim reported. No human casualties. The alien scouts were silent now, probably trying to process what they had witnessed. In 60 minutes, 12 humans with backpacks had destroyed a Hive patrol that would have given conventional forces serious problems. Dobbin checked the deployment status. The basic defensive systems were online ahead of schedule. The manufacturing systems were producing advanced materials faster than projected. The base's AI was learning from local conditions and optimizing its construction protocols. Status report. To Alien Command, she instructed Specialist O. Forward observation post established, beginning reconnaissance operations. She did not mention that the observation post now included manufacturing facilities, defensive systems, and enough firepower to level a city. The alien commanders would figure that out soon enough. As the sun began to set over Kepler 442b, the human base continued to grow. What had started as a backpack was becoming a fortress, and they were just getting started. Captain Lee Dobbin stood at what had once been an empty ridge and watched her backpack complete its impossible transformation. 3 hours had passed since deployment began, and the device had grown from a simple field pack into the heart of a genuine military installation. The manufacturing bay was now large enough to walk inside, its walls humming with the sound of molecular assemblers working at quantum speeds. AEGI's reports 40% completion, Sergeant Kim Tae-ho announced, as he monitored the construction displays. Defensive systems are fully operational. Manufacturing capacity is exceeding projections by 15%. The base looked like it belonged in a science fiction dream. Crystalline walls rose from the ridge like they had grown there naturally, but Dobbin knew they were actually composites stronger than any known metal. Defensive turrets moved with fluid grace as they tracked across potential threat vectors. Energy shields flickered almost invisibly around. Critical systems and it was all being built by machines that had been compressed into a backpack. Weighing less than 10 kilograms, Private Park Jiwoo approached from the perimeter, his weapon at ready position. Captain, we have incoming transmission from Alien Command. General Krextall wants visual confirmation of our position. Dabin smiled. She had been expecting this request. Grant access to public channels only. Let them see what we want them to see. The alien commanders were probably getting reports from their scouts that made no sense. How do you explain to a general that humans had built a fortress in 3 hours? Using camping equipment? The logical assumption would be that the scouts were malfunctioning or lying, but the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Corporal Lim Haijing called out from her position at the eastern defensive wall. Movement from the fortress. Looks like a major patrol this time. 20 biomechanical units moving fast. Dabin checked her tactical display. The hive had decided that whatever the humans were doing needed to be stopped immediately. 20 warriors was a serious response, enough to overwhelm most conventional positions. Against a normal human squad, it would be a massacre. Against what Dabin's team had built, it would be a demonstration. Defensive systems, prepare for engagement. She ordered. The base responded like a living thing. Turrets rotated toward the approaching threat. Shield generators increased power output. Manufacturing systems switched to combat mode, producing ammunition and replacement parts for anything that might be damaged in the fighting. Specialist Minsig's communications array had grown into a sophisticated intelligence gathering system. I'm reading detailed biosignatures on all 20 targets, he reported. The AI is identifying weak points and optimal engagement strategies. The approaching hive warriors were impressive specimens of biomechanical engineering. Each one stood 3 meters tall, their chitinous armor gleaming with organic polymers that could deflect most conventional weapons. Acid projectors and bioplasma cannons were integrated into their natural weapons systems. They moved with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. They had never faced human military technology before. The engagement began when the lead warrior came within 2 kilometers of the base. The defensive turrets opened fire with weapons that used principles the hive could not comprehend. Instead of explosive projectiles or energy beams, the humans used targeted disruption fields that interfered. With biomechanical systems at the cellular level, the effect was immediate and devastating. Hive warriors that had shrugged off alien plasma cannons simply stopped functioning as their organic components lost coordination with their mechanical parts. They did not explode or burn, they just fell down and stopped moving. Threat eliminated. Corporal Lim reported, no damage to defensive systems. The alien scouts watching from their distant position fell silent. Even through encrypted channels, Dabin could hear the shock in their voices as they tried to report what they had witnessed. Base Command, this is Scout Unit 7, came a transmission that was probably not meant for human ears. Human position. Has engaged and eliminated Hive Patrol Force. No visible damage to human installations. Repeat, humans have destroyed 20 Hive warriors with no losses. Dabin imagined the reaction at alien headquarters. 3 species with advanced military technology had failed to make significant progress against the Hive fortress. Now 12. Humans with backpacks had eliminated a major patrol without breaking a sweat. Staff. Sergeant Yu Dong-ho approached from the manufacturing bay, his expression satisfied. Captain, production systems are ahead of schedule. We'll have full deployment. Capability in 6 hours instead of 18. The base was becoming something that belonged in military science journals. Manufacturing bays produced materials that should not have been possible to create outside of specialized facilities. The AI systems were learning and adapting faster than any conventional computer. Most importantly, everything was designed to work together with perfect integration. Status update from AAGIS, the calm AI voice announced. Geological analysis complete. This location offers optimal conditions for extended operations. Recommend transition to Phase 2 deployment. Phase 2? Dabin had hoped they would reach this stage, but she had not expected it so soon. Phase 2 meant the base would stop looking like an advanced military installation and start looking like something from humanity's most ambitious dreams. Authorized, she said. Begin Phase 2 deployment. The base began to change again. New sections unfolded from components that had been hidden within the existing structures. Manufacturing bays doubled in size, then doubled again. The defensive perimeter expanded as automated systems began constructing additional fortifications, but the most impressive change was happening underground. The base was growing downward as well as outward, creating facilities that used the planet's own geological structure for protection and power. Geothermal taps provided unlimited energy. Mineral extraction systems turned the surrounding rock into raw materials. Private Park Ji-woo's geological survey equipment revealed its final secret as it deployed deep core mining systems. Captain, we're tapping into a major metal deposit. Enough rare elements to support manufacturing operations for months. The alien scouts were no longer trying to hide their amazement. Command, you need to see this, came a transmission from Scout Unit 3. Human position is, it's becoming a city. They're building a city with camping equipment. General Krextall's response was immediate and incredulous. Impossible. Humans do not have city-building technology. Report actual observations. Sir, I am reporting actual observations. Human base now covers approximately 1 square kilometer. Multiple defensive systems, manufacturing facilities, and what appears to be residential construction. Built in 4 hours from equipment carried in backpacks. Long silence from alien command. Finally, Commander Velanash's crystalline voice chimed across the communication channel. Scout units, maintain observation distance. Do not approach human position without authorization. We need to understand what we are dealing with. Dobbin checked the base status displays. Manufacturing systems were producing advanced materials, faster than any alien facility. Defensive systems could now protect against fleet-level bombardment. The AI was designing improvements faster than the construction systems could implement them, and this was just the beginning. Sergeant Kim, prepare for visitors, she ordered. I think our alien allies are going to want a closer look at what humans can do with proper equipment. The base continued to grow as the alien sun set behind the hive fortress. Tomorrow would bring the real test, when 3 alien civilizations would have to decide whether humans were primitive newcomers or the most advanced military engineers in known space. Div suspected she already knew which conclusion they would reach. The morning light revealed something that should not have existed. Where 12 humans had walked onto an empty ridge 18 hours earlier, a complete military installation now dominated the landscape. Captain Lee Dubin stood on the command tower's observation deck, watching alien aircraft circle the base at respectful distances while their occupants tried to understand what they were seeing. Base status report, she requested from AAGIS. All primary systems operational, the AI responded. Defensive capability now rated for capital ship engagement. Manufacturing output exceeds design specifications by 37%. Geological integration is complete. The base is now a permanent installation capable of independent operation. Permanent installation. The words carried weight that even Daybin had not fully anticipated. What had started as a forward observation post had become something that could serve as a regional headquarters for the entire Galactic War effort. Sergeant Kim Tae-ho approached with a satisfied expression. Captain, we just received a priority transmission from Alien Command. All 3 commanders are requesting immediate briefing on human capabilities. They want to visit the base personally. Schedule them for this afternoon, Dobbin replied. Make sure they understand they're visiting a Terran Defense Corps facility. Full military protocols apply. The base had grown far beyond what the compressed equipment should have been able to produce. The secret was in the manufacturing philosophy that human engineers had developed over centuries of innovation. Instead of building large, expensive facilities that produced finished goods, humans built small, intelligent systems that could create anything needed from local materials. Every piece of equipment in Dobbin's original backpack had been designed to work with every other piece. The result was exponential capability growth that alien military planners could not have predicted, because they had never seen anything like it before. Corporal Lemahijin supervised the eastern defensive sector from a control center that rivaled anything on Earth. Captain, High Fortress is showing increased activity. They're definitely aware that something significant has changed over here. The fortress was preparing for another probe, probably with more force this time. But Dabin was no longer concerned. About Hive attacks? The base's defensive systems could handle anything short of a full-scale assault, and even that would be costly for the attackers. Private Park Jiwoo emerged from the geological survey station with data that made Dabin smile. Captain, the deep core mining systems have identified significant resource deposits. Enough rare metals to support construction of additional bases across the continent. Additional bases. The implications were staggering. If humans could replicate this construction capability, they could establish a network of installations that would change the strategic balance of the entire war. The Hive's advantage in defensive positions would become irrelevant if humans could build better fortresses in a matter of hours. Specialist. Oh, Min-Sik looked up from his communications console with obvious excitement. Captain, I'm intercepting Hive communications. Their command structure is ... Confused? They're trying to classify our base using their standard threat assessment protocols, but nothing matches their database. Dubin was not surprised. The Hive had evolved their military doctrine over thousands of years of conflict with species that followed predictable patterns. Massive armies, expensive equipment, slow deployment cycles. Humans did not fit any of those patterns. What's their current assessment? She asked. They're treating us as an unknown alien species with advanced technology, O replied. They think we might be a scouting force for a new galactic civilization? The irony was perfect. Humans were considered primitive by their galactic allies, but the Hive was treating them as potentially superior to anything they had encountered before. The truth was somewhere in between, but it suggested that human engineering capabilities were more advanced than anyone had realized. Staff. Sergeant Yu Dongho called from the manufacturing complex. Captain, production systems are ready for the next phase. We can begin fabricating equipment for our alien allies if you authorize it. Daibin considered the implications. The alien forces had superior firepower in numbers, but their equipment was designed using principles that were centuries out of date. Human manufacturing systems could produce gear that would multiply their effectiveness while maintaining compatibility with their existing capabilities. Authorized, she decided. Begin with defensive improvements. Focus on systems that will keep more alien soldiers alive during the assault. The alien commanders arrived that afternoon in a convoy of vehicles. It looked impressive until they parked next to the human base. General Krextal's command transport was a massive hover tank designed to intimidate enemies and protect important passengers. Commander Velanash traveled in an elegant crystalline craft that gleamed like a jewel. Grox arrived in a utilitarian, Saurid tunnel crawler. Built for function over form, all three vehicles looked primitive compared to the automated systems greeting them at the base entrance. Welcome to Fort Dabin, Sergeant Kim announced as the alien leaders disembarked. The captain is waiting in the command center. Dabin met them in a briefing room that had not existed 24 hours earlier. The space was designed to accommodate all three alien species comfortably, with environmental controls automatically adjusted for their different physiological needs. The conference table was carved from local crystalline rock, but polished to mirror perfection. Gentlemen, she began, thank you for accepting our invitation. I believe we have much to discuss. General Krextal's 4 eyes studied everything in the room with obvious bewilderment. Captain, I must ask direct question. How is this possible? Yesterday you carried small backpack. Today you command installation that revolves our homeworld. Military bases. Human engineering doctrine emphasizes efficiency and adaptability, Dobbin replied. We design our equipment to maximize capability while minimizing transportation requirements. Commander Velanash's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on deep blue. Captain, our intelligence analysts have reviewed all available data on human technology. This level of construction capability does not appear in any of our files. That's because we don't typically reveal our full capabilities until they're needed, Dobbin explained. Military security requires certain discretions. Grox leaned forward, his scaled hands flat on the table. You saying humans been hiding this technology? For how long? We've been developing adaptive construction systems for approximately 200 years, Dobbin answered honestly. This is the first time we've deployed them in a major military operation. The alien commanders exchanged looks that needed no translation. They were realizing that their primitive human allies possessed engineering capabilities that exceeded their own by several generations. Question is, Krextel said slowly, what you want to do with this capability. Dobbin activated the holographic display system. A three-dimensional map of the local area appeared above the table, showing the hive fortress in detail that made all three aliens lean forward with interest. We want to win this war, she said simply. Our base gives us advantages that no previous assault force has possessed. Real-time intelligence, adaptive manufacturing, sustainable logistics, and defensive positions that can't be overrun. The map updated to show suggested attack routes, defensive positions, and support logistics. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential effectiveness. You proposing coordinated assault using this base as staging area? Velanash asked. I'm proposing we stop throwing soldiers at walls and start fighting smart, Dobbin replied. Your forces provide the firepower. Our base provides the coordination and support. Together we can accomplish what neither side could manage alone. Grox studied the tactical displays with obvious approval. Sword forces can benefit from human logistics support. Our tunnel operations require precise timing and coordination. Ethereal energy weapons could be more effective with human targeting. Systems. Velanash admitted. General Krextal was quiet for several minutes, his massive form still as he considered the implications. Finally, he spoke. If humans can truly provide this level of support, Vorthic forces will participate in coordinated assault. But I have condition. Name it, Dobbin said. If we succeed, I want to learn how to build bases like this one. Vorthok military needs this technology, Dobbin smiled. General, I think that can be arranged. After we win this war, there will be plenty of opportunities for technology sharing. The meeting continued for 3 hours as they refined assault plans and coordinated logistics. When the alien commanders finally departed, they left behind officers who would serve as liaisons during the upcoming operation. As the alien vehicles disappeared toward their staging areas, Dobbin stood on the observation deck and watched the sun set behind the hive fortress. Tomorrow would bring the real test of human military engineering, but tonight, she was confident they were ready for anything the galaxy could throw at them. Captain Lee Dobbin watched from the command center as alien forces began arriving at Fort Dobbin in numbers that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. What had started as a small forward observation post was now serving as the staging ground for the largest coordinated assault in galactic military history. General Krextal-S Vorthic warriors filled the southern approaches, their massive forms moving with surprising grace as they established defensive positions around the human base. Each warrior carried weapons that could level buildings, but they handled their equipment with careful respect for the advanced systems surrounding them. Commander Velanash-S ethereal forces floated in perfect formations above the northern sectors, their crystalline bodies catching and refracting the morning light into dazzling displays of color. Their energy-based technology created a beautiful contrast with the solid, practical human constructions that formed the base's foundation. Grox's Saurid tunneling teams had dug themselves defensive positions throughout the eastern approaches, their excavated chambers connecting with the human base's underground facilities in ways that showed remarkable engineering cooperation. Status report, Dobbin requested from Sergeant Kim Tae-ho. All alien forces have integrated successfully with base operations, Kim replied. AEGIS reports no compatibility issues with foreign equipment or personnel. The AI is actually learning. From alien technology and suggesting improvements to our own systems, that was the beauty of human adaptive design philosophy. Their systems were built to work with anything, to learn from any source, and to improve constantly based on new information. The alien forces brought centuries of military experience and advanced weaponry. The human base provided coordination, logistics, and manufacturing support that turned individual strengths into overwhelming combined capability. Corporal, Lim Haijin approached from the Defensive Coordination Center. Captain, the alien liaison. Officers are ready for the integrated systems briefing. They want to understand how their forces will interface with our support network. The briefing room had been expanded overnight to accommodate representatives from all three alien species. Lieutenant Dekanar represented the Vorthak forces, his scarred armor marking him as a veteran of dozens of battles. Crystal Singer Nauthasa spoke for the Ethereals, her form constantly shifting through subtle color changes as she processed new information. Sub-Commander Crystal served as the Saurid liaison, his quick movements and sharp questions showing the practical mindset of his species. Gentlemen, began, welcome to Fort Dabin's integrated command structure. Over the next several hours, your forces will become part of the most advanced military operation in recorded galactic history. She activated the holographic display system, which immediately filled the room with a three-dimensional representation of the entire operational area. The Hive Fortress sat at the center, surrounded by detailed terrain maps, defensive analysis, and real-time intelligence data. Our base provides several key advantages, Dabin continued. First, real-time intelligence gathering through quantum-enhanced sensor networks. Second, adaptive manufacturing systems that can produce specialized equipment for any tactical situation. Third, coordinated logistics support that ensures every unit receives exactly what it needs when it needs it. Lieutenant Dekanar studied the tactical displays with obvious interest. Human systems can coordinate with Vorthic battle protocols. AEGIS has analyzed your combat doctrines and identified optimal integration points, Dabin replied. Your assault formations will receive targeting data, ammunition resupply, and medical support automatically. The AI will adapt to your tactical decisions in real time. Crystal Singer Nauthissa S form shifted to bright silver. Ethereal energy weapons require precise timing and coordination. Can human systems provide that level of synchronization? Specialist O Minsik spoke up from his communications console. Our quantum communication network operates faster than thought. We can coordinate your energy discharges with precision measured in nanoseconds. Sub-Commander Crixtal hissed softly, which Dabin had learned was a sign of approval among the swords and tunnel operations. Underground coordination is extremely complex. Private Park Ji-Woo's geological survey systems had become the foundation for underground coordination. Our deep core sensors can track movement through solid rock. Your tunnel teams will have real-time navigation support and emergency extraction capabilities. The alien officers exchanged glances that suggested they were beginning to understand the scope of human capabilities. This was not just advanced technology. This was a completely different approach to warfare that made conventional tactics obsolete. Demonstration. General Crextal-S voice boomed from the communication system. The Vorthak commander was still at his field headquarters, but the base's communication network made him feel present in the room. Show us how this coordination works, Dabin smiled. She had been hoping for this request. AEGIS, initiate demonstration. Protocol, simulated combat scenario, all forces. The holographic display updated to show a hypothetical assault on the Hive Fortress. Alien forces moved across the terrain in formations that looked familiar to their officers, but with coordination and support that exceeded anything they had experienced before. Vorthak assault teams advanced under covering fire that was perfectly timed with their movement patterns. Ethereal energy bombardments struck precisely at the moments when they would cause maximum disruption to enemy formations. Saurid tunnel teams emerged from underground positions that had been selected by AI. Analysis of enemy defensive weaknesses, But the most impressive element was the support network that connected everything. Supply drones delivered ammunition before units ran low. Medical teams responded to casualties within seconds of injury. Engineering teams repaired damaged equipment faster than enemies could destroy it. "This is impossible," Lieutenant Decanar muttered. "This is Tuesday afternoon for human military operations," Sergeant Kim replied with a slight smile. Crystal Singer Nauthisa had shifted to deep purple, indicating serious consideration. "The level of coordination required for this operation exceeds our current communication capabilities." "That's why you're interfacing with our systems," Dobbin explained. EGIs will handle the coordination complexity. Your officers make tactical decisions, and the AI ensures perfect execution. Sub-Commander Krickstall was studying the underground portions of the simulation with particular interest. Sword tunnel operations have never achieved this level of surface coordination. "Usually we operate independently and hope for the best. Not anymore," Private Park assured him. "Every tunnel team will have constant communication with surface forces and complete situational awareness." The demonstration continued for an hour, showing scenario after scenario where combined alien firepower and human coordination produced results that none of the species could achieve alone. By the end, the alien officers were asking detailed questions about integration protocols and requesting additional demonstrations. "When do we begin the actual assault?" Lieutenant Decanar asked. Ben checked the operational status displays. Manufacturing systems had produced specialized equipment for all three alien forces. Defensive systems were ready to provide covering fire during the advance. Intelligence networks had identified every weak point in the Hive Fortress defenses. "Tomorrow, at dawn," she announced. "The Hive has had thousands of years to perfect their defenses against conventional attacks. They've never faced anything like what we're bringing to this fight." Staff Sergeant Yu Dong-ho called from the manufacturing center. "Captain, production systems have completed all requested modifications to alien equipment. Vorthek plasma cannons now have enhanced targeting systems. Ethereal energy weapons have improved focusing crystals. Sora tunnel borers have quantum navigation aids." The alien officers looked at each other with expressions that needed no translation. In less than 2 days, humans had not only built an impossible military base but had also improved the equipment of 3 advanced civilizations. "One question," Crystal Singer Nauthisa said, her form shifting to curious yellow. "Why have humans kept these capabilities secret? This technology could have ended the war years ago." Dobbin considered her answer carefully. "Because showing your full strength too early can be a strategic mistake. Sometimes it's better to let enemies underestimate you until the moment when superior capability matters most." General Krextall's laughter boomed through the communication system. "Humans think like Vorthak warriors, keep enemies guessing until time for killing blow." As the alien officers departed to brief their respective forces, Dobbin stood on the observation deck and watched the sun set behind the Hive Fortress. Tomorrow would determine whether human engineering and alien firepower could accomplish what conventional tactics had failed to achieve. But tonight, for the first time since the war began, she was genuinely optimistic about their chances. Dawn broke over Kepler 442b with the sound of war machines preparing for battle. Captain Lee Da-bin stood in the command center of Fort Da-bin, watching as 3 alien civilizations prepared to discover what human military engineering could accomplish when properly applied to galactic warfare. "All forces report ready status," Sergeant Kim Tae-ho announced from his coordination console. "Vorthak assault teams in position. Ethereal energy platforms charged and targeted. Sorid tunnel teams have reached optimal positions beneath enemy fortifications." The holographic display showed the Hive Fortress surrounded by a coordinated force unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of the usual chaotic multi-species assault, every unit was connected through the human bases. Quantum communication network? AEGIS monitored thousands of individual soldiers and vehicles, coordinating their actions with precision that made them function like a single, massive organism. "AEGI status report," Dobbin requested. All systems optimal, the AI responded. Enemy defensive analysis complete. Probability of mission success, 94% with current force configuration. Estimated time to fortress breach, 6 hours, 43 minutes, 6 hours. 3 previous assaults had lasted for weeks before failing completely. The difference was coordination, intelligence, and adaptive support systems that turned individual strengths into overwhelming combined capability. Commence Operation Thunderstrike. The bin ordered. The assault began with ethereal energy bombardment that lit up the morning sky like an artificial sunrise. But instead of the random target selection used in previous attacks, every energy beam was guided by AI analysis of fortress weak points. Crystal Singer Nalthissa S forces struck with surgical precision, their weapons guided by sensor data that showed them exactly where to focus their devastating power. The Hive Fortress responded with defensive fire that would have shattered conventional assault forces. Bioplasma cannons and acid projectors created a deadly barrier around the fortress walls. But the attacking forces were no longer conventional. Vorthek assault teams advanced under covering fire that was perfectly coordinated with their movement patterns. General Krextal S warriors carried their usual overwhelming firepower. But now they also carried human-manufactured shields that adapted to enemy weapon frequencies. Their plasma cannons used targeting data provided by the base's sensor networks, allowing them to strike critical points that had never been vulnerable before. Vorthek forces are through the outer defensive perimeter, Lieutenant Dekenar reported. Casualties are minimal. Human shields are functioning beyond all expectations. Corporal Lim Haijin monitored the underground portion of the assault from her position at the Geological Coordination Station. Sword tunnel teams have breached the fortress foundation. Sub-Commander Krikstal reports they're inside the lower levels. The sword approach had been transformed by human coordination. Instead of independent tunnel operations that might or might not connect with surface attacks, Grox's forces moved through carefully planned routes that brought them exactly where surface forces needed underground support. Their tunnel borers carried quantum navigation, systems that kept them in constant communication with the overall battle plan. Private Park, Jiwoo called out from his intelligence station. Hive command structure is showing signs of confusion. They're trying to coordinate defensive responses, but our attack pattern doesn't match any of their predicted scenarios. The Hive had evolved their defensive doctrine over thousands of years of warfare against species that followed predictable patterns. Massive frontal assaults, orbital bombardments, siege tactics that relied on overwhelming force applied in conventional ways. The coordinated human-alien assault broke every rule in the Galactic Warfare Handbook. Enemy is attempting to adapt defensive protocols, AEGIS announced, implementing counter-adaptation measures. That was the true power of human military engineering. The AI was not just coordinating the assault. It was learning from enemy responses and adapting faster than biological commanders could think. Every Hive defensive move was analyzed, predicted, and countered before it could become effective. Specialist, though. Minsik looked up from his communications console with obvious excitement. Captain, I'm intercepting Hive internal communications. Their command hierarchy is breaking down. They've never faced an assault force that operates like this. The fortress walls began to crack under pressure that no single species could have applied effectively. Ethereal energy weapons created precise, weak points that Vorthak plasma cannons exploited with devastating efficiency. Sword tunnel teams emerged inside defensive positions at exactly the moments when surface forces needed internal support, but the most remarkable element was the logistics network that kept the assault moving forward. Supply drones delivered ammunition before units ran low. Medical teams evacuated wounded soldiers through underground tunnels that brought them directly to the base's advanced medical facilities. Engineering teams repaired damaged equipment faster than the Hive could destroy it. Status report from all fronts, Dobbin requested. Vorthek forces have breached the main wall, came General Krextal S. triumphant roar. Human coordination is perfect. My warriors know exactly where to strike. Ethereal energy platforms are maintaining optimal firing solutions, Crystal Singer Nalthissa reported. Human targeting systems exceed our most advanced predictions. Saurid teams control 60% of underground fortress, Sub-Commander Crystal hissed with satisfaction. Human navigation makes tunnel warfare simple. Dobbin smiled as she watched the tactical displays update in real time. The assault was proceeding ahead of schedule, with casualties lower than the most optimistic projections. The combination of alien firepower and human coordination was proving to be exactly as devastating as she had hoped. Staff Sergeant Yu Dongho called from the manufacturing center. Captain, production systems are keeping pace with ammunition. Demand, we're also fabricating specialized breaching equipment as needed. The base's manufacturing systems were performing their own kind of miracle, producing equipment designed specifically for the tactical situations developing in real time. When Vorthok forces encountered unexpected bioarmor configurations, the manufacturing systems produced specialized penetrator rounds. When ethereal weapons needed different focusing crystals for underground operations, the base produced them within minutes. Hive Fortress is showing structural failure in multiple sectors, AEGS reported. Enemy command and control systems are operating at 17% efficiency. Fortress breach is imminent. The end came faster than anyone had expected. The Hive's defensive doctrine simply could not cope with an assault that broke every rule of conventional warfare. Their biomechanical systems were designed to repel massive frontal attacks, not surgical strikes coordinated with nanosecond precision. Fortress Command Center is compromised, Private Park announced. Sword forces have captured the central hive mind nexus. The Hive Fortress that had withstood 3 major assaults lasting weeks fell to a coordinated attack in less than 7 hours. The walls that had seemed impregnable were breached by forces that worked together with perfect coordination. The defensive systems that had slaughtered thousands of alien soldiers were neutralized by tactics they had never been designed to counter. All forces, this is Captain Daybin, she announced on the general communication channel. Fortress secured. Mission accomplished. The celebration that echoed across the communication networks was unlike anything in galactic military history. 3 alien civilizations had just learned what humans could accomplish when they stopped hiding their true capabilities, but Dobbin knew this was just the beginning. The techniques demonstrated here would revolutionize galactic warfare. The combination of human engineering and alien firepower would change the strategic balance of power throughout known space. As the sun set over the captured Hive Fortress, she stood on the observation deck of Fort Dabin and watched alien soldiers celebrating their first decisive victory in the longest war any of them could remember. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight belonged to the warriors who had proven that cooperation and coordination could overcome any enemy, no matter how well defended or how ancient their advantages might be. The Hive Fortress fell silent for the first time in 1,000 years. Captain Lee Dobbin walked through corridors that had never known the footsteps of Galactic Alliance soldiers, past biomechanical walls that still pulsed with fading organic rhythms. The ancient stronghold that had seemed impossible to breach was now a monument to what coordinated military engineering could accomplish. Final casualty reports, Sergeant Kim Tae-ho announced as he joined her in what had once been the fortress's command chamber. Vorthek losses, 12 wounded, none killed. Ethereal casualties, 3 injured, all expected to recover fully. Saurid forces, 8 wounded, 2 seriously but stable. 23 casualties total. The 3 previous assaults on this fortress had cost over 40,000 lives. The difference was not just superior technology or better tactics. It was the human philosophy of fighting smart instead of fighting hard. General Krextal's massive form filled the doorway as he entered the command chamber. His 4 arms gestured expansively as he spoke, his voice carrying obvious amazement. Captain Dean, I have fought in 200 battles across 50 worlds. Never have I seen victory achieved with such ... efficiency. The word carried weight, coming from a Vorthek commander. Efficiency was not a concept that came naturally to a species, whose traditional tactics involved overwhelming force applied without subtlety. But even General Krextol could not argue with results that spoke for themselves. Commander Villanash floated into the chamber, her crystalline form cycling through colors that indicated deep contemplation. The coordination systems you provided exceeded our most optimistic projections. Ethereal forces achieved targeting accuracy that our theorists claimed was impossible. Grox entered with his usual practical directness, his scaled hands already examining the biomechanical systems that controlled the fortress's vital functions. Sword tunnel operations never had surface coordination like this. My teams could focus on breakthrough instead of navigation. Simple, effective. Simple and effective. That was the essence of human military engineering. Instead of building the most powerful weapons or the largest armies, humans built systems that made existing capabilities work better together. The result was exponential. Improvement in overall effectiveness. Private Park Ji-woo approached from the intelligence analysis station that his equipment had established in the fortress's former communications center. Captain, the data we're gathering from Hive systems is incredible. This fortress was connected to their entire strategic network. We now have intelligence on Hive operations across 12-star systems. 12-star systems. The intelligence value of this single victory would reshape the entire Galactic War effort. But Dubin knew that the real prize was not information about enemy positions. It was proof that human coordination systems could turn any collection of alien forces into an unstoppable military organization. Corporal Lim Haijin called from the medical bay that her equipment had deployed in the fortress's lower levels. Captain, we have Hive prisoners requesting medical treatment. The biomechanical soldiers are more machine than biological, but our systems can help them. That was another aspect of human military doctrine that confused their galactic allies. Humans treated enemy wounded with the same care they gave their own soldiers. It was not just humanitarian principle. It was practical psychology that turned enemies into potential allies. Provide full medical support, Dubin ordered. And see if any of them are willing to discuss their strategic situation. Lieutenant Cho Subin emerged from what had been the fortress's central processing core, her medical equipment now serving as an analysis station for captured biotechnology. Captain, the Hive engineering is more advanced than we realized. Their biomechanical systems are actually quite elegant. We could learn from their integration principles. Learning from enemies was another human characteristic that alien military doctrine considered strange. Most galactic species fought to destroy their opponents completely. Humans fought to understand their opponents and then adapted their techniques for future use. A specialist. Oh, Minsik looked up from his expanded communications center with obvious excitement. Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from Galactic Alliance High Command. They want immediate detailed reports on our operational methods. Dubin was not surprised. News of this victory would spread quickly through military channels, and every species in the Alliance would want to understand how 12 humans with backpacks had accomplished what entire fleets had failed to achieve. Draft a preliminary report? She instructed. Focus on coordination principles and adaptive logistics. Leave out the technical specifications for now. The technical specifications were humanity's strategic advantage. Sharing coordination principles would help their allies fight more effectively. Sharing the technology behind those principles would require much more careful consideration. Staff. Sergeant Yu Dongho approached from the manufacturing center that his equipment had established in the fortress's former armory. Captain, our systems have analyzed Hive biomechanical technology. We can begin producing hybrid equipment that combines their biological advantages with our manufacturing precision. Hybrid equipment. The possibility opened new avenues for military development that could benefit all Alliance species. But it also demonstrated how quickly human adaptive systems could learn and improve based on new information. AGI status. Report, Dubin requested from the AI that had coordinated the entire operation. Mission parameters exceeded in all categories, the calm voice responded. Tactical coordination achieved 97% efficiency. Logistics support maintained. Optimal levels throughout operation. Intelligence gathering exceeded projected yields by 400%. Casualty rates were 78% below conservative estimates. The numbers told the story more clearly than any dramatic narrative. Human military engineering had transformed 3 separate alien forces into a coordinated organization that achieved the impossible with minimal losses. Admiral Vexron is requesting permission to visit the fortress, Sergeant Kim announced. He wants to see the results personally. The old Vorthok admiral had been the only alien commander who had not dismissed human capabilities. Dobbin suspected he would not be surprised by what they had accomplished, but his endorsement would carry weight with military leaders across the galaxy. Grant permission, she decided. Full honors protocol. Admiral Vexron deserves to see what vision and experience made possible. As the day progressed, the captured fortress transformed from an enemy stronghold into a symbol of what galactic cooperation could achieve. Human medical teams treated Hive wounded with the same care they gave Alliance soldiers. Human engineering teams worked with alien specialists to understand captured technology. Human coordination systems began integrating the fortress into the Alliance's strategic communications network, but the most significant change was happening in the minds of the alien soldiers who had participated in the assault. They had experienced military coordination beyond anything in their previous experience. They had seen how human adaptive systems could take their existing capabilities and multiply their effectiveness exponentially. Crystal Singer Nalthissa approached Dubin as she stood in the fortress's former command center, now converted into a coordination hub for ongoing operations. Captain, I must ask a question that troubles my people. Of course, Dubin replied. Why did humans hide these capabilities for so long? This level of military coordination could have changed the course of the war years ago. Dobbin considered her answer carefully. Because revealing your full strength too early can be a strategic mistake. Our enemies needed to underestimate us until the moment when superior capability would have maximum impact. The ethereal's form shifted to deep blue, indicating understanding. You allowed others to think humans were weak while you prepared to be strong. We allowed others to focus on our limitations while we focused on our possibilities, Dobbin corrected. Gently as the alien sun set behind the captured fortress, Dobbin stood on what had once been an enemy observation deck and watched Alliance forces, celebrating their first decisive victory in the longest war any of them could remember. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the galaxy adjusted to the reality of human military capabilities. But tonight belonged to the soldiers who had proven that coordination and cooperation could overcome any enemy, no matter how ancient their advantages or how perfect their defenses might seem. The age of human military engineering had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the fall of the Hive Fortress, Admiral Lee Dubin stood before the Galactic Military Academy's greatest auditorium, facing an audience that represented every known spacefaring civilization. The hall was packed with military officers, government officials, and academic researchers who had come to hear about the revolution in warfare that humans had quietly developed while others focused on traditional approaches to galactic conflict. The auditorium itself was a marvel of multi-species engineering, designed to accommodate the different environmental needs of dozens of alien races. Vorthok officers sat in reinforced sections built to support their massive frames. Ethereal representatives floated in specialized chambers that enhanced their crystalline forms. Saurid delegates occupied underground sections that connected to the surface through carefully designed tunnel networks, but it was the human section that drew the most attention. What had once been considered the least important part of any galactic military gathering was now the focal point of intense interest. Every major military leader in known space wanted to understand how a species they had dismissed as primitive had revolutionized the art of war. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, Admiral Dobbin began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems that made galactic communication possible. 6 months ago, many of you would have laughed at the idea that humans had anything meaningful to contribute to galactic military doctrine. Polite laughter rippled through the audience, but it was the kind of laughter that acknowledged past mistakes rather than present humor. The beings in this auditorium had learned to take human military capabilities very seriously indeed. Behind Dai Bin, a holographic display showed the original backpack that had started everything. The device sat in the Alliance Museum of Military Innovation, surrounded by detailed explanations of how human adaptive engineering had achieved the impossible. Visitors came from across the galaxy to study the technology that had changed everything. Today I want to share with you the principles behind adaptive deployment doctrine, Dobbin continued. Not the technology itself, which remains classified, but the philosophy that makes such technology possible. The distinction was important. Human military leaders had decided to share their strategic thinking while keeping their technical advantages secure. Other species could learn to fight more effectively, but they would have to develop their own solutions rather than simply copying human designs. General Krextol occupied a place of honor in the front row, his scarred armor polished to perfection. For the occasion, the Vorthik commander had become one of the strongest advocates for human military doctrine within his own species' command structure. His testimony about the fortress assault had convinced even the most traditional Vorthik leaders that overwhelming force was no longer sufficient for modern warfare. The first principle of adaptive deployment, Dobbin explained, is maximum capability through minimum logistics. Instead of transporting finished equipment across galactic distances, we transport the ability to create whatever equipment the situation requires. The holographic display updated to show manufacturing principles that made alien engineers lean forward with intense interest. The concepts were simple enough to understand but sophisticated enough to require fundamental changes in how military organizations approached logistics and supply chains. Commander Velenash had requested permission to record the entire lecture for analysis by ethereal military scientists. Her crystalline form was shifting through rapid color changes as she processed information that challenged centuries of established military thinking. The second principle, Dobbin continued, is adaptive coordination through intelligent systems. Instead of rigid command hierarchies that break down under stress, we use AI networks that learn and adapt faster than biological commanders can think. Grox raised one clawed hand to ask a question. How do you maintain command authority when artificial intelligence systems make tactical decisions? It was a question that every species struggled with as they tried to implement human-style coordination. The fear of losing control to machines was universal among organic military commanders. The AI does not make decisions, Dobbin explained. It provides information and coordinates execution. Command authority remains with biological officers who understand the larger strategic picture. The answer was both reassuring and technically accurate, though it did not fully explain how sophisticated human AI systems had become. That level of detail would remain classified until humanity's political leaders decided how much technology to share with their galactic allies. Sergeant Major Kim Tae-ho sat in the audience, now wearing the insignia of the Terran Adaptive Combat Engineering Corps. His new unit had grown from 12 soldiers to over 10,000, with representatives from dozens of species learning human deployment techniques. The integration process was challenging, but the results spoke for themselves. The third principle, Dobbin said, is sustainable operations through environmental integration. Instead of imposing our technology on local conditions, we design systems that work with whatever resources are available. Private Park Ji-woo, now Captain Park, had written the textbook on geological integration that was being studied at military academies across the galaxy. His techniques for using local materials in military construction had revolutionized field engineering for every species that tried to implement them. These principles represent more than just new technology, Dobbin continued. They represent a fundamental shift in how we think about military operations, from force projection to capability projection. From overwhelming enemies to outthinking enemies, from winning through strength to winning through intelligence. The audience was silent now, absorbing concepts that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare. For species that had spent centuries developing bigger weapons and larger armies, the idea that intelligence and coordination could be more important than raw firepower was genuinely revolutionary. Lieutenant Colonel Cho Soo-bin represented the medical branch of the new human military doctrine. Her techniques for adaptive battlefield medicine had reduced casualty rates across all Alliance forces by an average of 60%. The galaxy was learning that human engineering principles applied to saving lives as effectively as they applied to winning battles. Questions? Dobbin invited. Admiral Vexron stood slowly, his ancient form commanding immediate respect from every being in the auditorium. Admiral Dobbin, one question that concerns many military leaders: if these principles are so effective, why did humans wait so long to reveal them? The question had been asked hundreds of times in dozens of different ways, but it remained the most important issue for galactic military planning. If humans had possessed such capabilities all along, what else might they be hiding? Because timing matters in warfare, Dobbin replied. Revealing capabilities too early can negate their strategic value. Our enemies needed to underestimate us, until the moment when superior coordination would have maximum impact. And now, Vexron pressed, what prevents humans from using these same techniques against their current allies? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every being in the auditorium understood the implications. If humans could revolutionize warfare so completely, what prevented them from using that revolution to dominate their former allies? Because humans do not seek domination, Dobbin answered simply. We seek cooperation. Our military doctrine is designed to make our allies more effective, not to replace them. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper if we work together. The answer was politically correct and strategically wise, but it also happened to be true. Human expansion into galactic civilization was based on cooperation and mutual benefit rather than conquest and subjugation. The military techniques they shared were designed to strengthen alliance forces rather than weaken potential opponents. Specialist O Minsik. Now Commander O had established the galactic communications network that allowed real-time coordination between species separated by vast distances. His techniques were being adopted by civilian organizations as well as military units, revolutionizing how galactic civilization managed complex operations. The future of galactic warfare, Dobbin concluded, belongs to organizations that can adapt faster than their enemies can respond. Technology helps, but the real advantage comes from thinking differently about what war means in an age when intelligence travels faster than weapons. The presentation continued for 3 hours, covering tactical applications, strategic implications, and training methodologies. When it finally ended, the audience rose in a sustained ovation that acknowledged not just the quality of the presentation, but the magnitude of the changes it represented. After the formal session ended, Dobbin was surrounded by military officers, requesting detailed briefings, government officials wanting technology transfer agreements, and academic researchers seeking access to classified information. The attention was overwhelming, but it was also necessary for the larger goal of transforming how galactic civilization approached collective security. Staff Sergeant Yu Dong-ho, now General Yu, commanded the Manufacturing Support Division that was revolutionizing military logistics across the galaxy. His teams worked with every alliance,